Thank you for your testimony. Senator Przanski?
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. I just want to put something out as a question more for the law enforcement individuals and following up what the Co-Chair asked as to what is might have been discussed as to alternatives for crowd control. You know, this takes us back, and I mean, this is like deja vu back to the 60s for us who grew up in that era. Water cannons was one of the things that was used at that point in time. And I mean, it seems like, well, maybe that could work, but it also seems like it'd have a lot of pitfalls. I'm online kind of just looking to see what's there. ACLU has some paper studies and documentations to it. And I'm just wondering from the law enforcement perspective, thinking outside the box of the type of tools that you have access to now, are there other ones like water cannons? Has that even been considered, or is that something that should be considered? I mean, I'm just trying to think of something that isn't chemical that still might be able to disperse, but I'm not saying that's the way to do it. I'm just looking for something outside of the current thinking of use of chemicals to disperse.
And if I can ask a clarifying question on top of that, are we talking about bringing back hoses and dogs?
And I'm not sure who you're putting that question to, Madam Co-Chair, but if you're putting it to me, I do not find any humor in that one bit.
I'm not being funny. I just want to.
And why are you bringing it up?
Is a water cannon similar to a hose?
Let me jump in here for a minute. I think that what Senator Przanski is asking about alternative uses for, and I want to make a distinction between crowd control and riot control. I think that we're loosely using two words together. Again, a crowd can be a group of folks going to the motor center. So in terms of riot, we're talking about potential criminal activities that are being engaged in, or something that's violating the rule of law versus a crowd or a peaceful gathering. So words are really important. My time in the military with the Army Material Command, we always sought out different types of technologies in order to deal with a variety of issues. The question that I think that Senator Przanski was trying to convey, what other methods have they explored instead of using these, this is what we have, and these are only we can use? Is that something that you were leading up to, Senator Przanski?
I'm sorry if my statement didn't come as clear as that, but that's exactly what I thought I said, was looking for alternatives outside of the box of using chemicals. What else is there? And the example that I was giving was something that I know that has been used in the past, and I am still going to say I am very concerned by our Madam Co-Chair, your insinuation that I'm saying something that I was not saying. And I will tell you at this point right now, I'm very, very frustrated by such statements on a record regarding some comparison as to what you have put on the table.
Let me be very clear. Is a water cannon similar to a hose?
A hose is something that was used to beat people with.
So I
That's
wasn't
my
there.
context of what it is. I'm sorry.
I wasn't there. Forgive me for being born in the 70s. I just want to be very clear that we're talking about. Let me back up. So we have had conversations in the Judiciary Committee about using dogs to extract AICs. And I had to be very clear that that was that brought back very bad pictures. I wasn't born during that time, but that is something that through generations we've passed down. We're not going back there. And so when I hear water cannons, I hear water, I see hoses, I see dogs. Now, I apologize that that is not an experience that everyone on this committee might have. I'm simply telling you that is what it brought up for me, and I asked the clarifying question. No intent of harm on your side. There are people in the public who are listening and may have that very same question. So what I hear you saying is that no, you are not proposing that we bring back hoses or that we bring back water to spray on people. You're asking what other alternatives are there. Is that clear?
My question to the law enforcement was, outside of the box of using chemicals, what else is there that could potentially be used? The water cannons was on. I'm not going to give you a response to the other because I find that indigning to talk about bringing dogs back or bringing hoses and beating people. I'm very, very frustrated by your inquiry, Madam Co-Chair.
So the question is, what are the alternatives in terms of riot management and not crowd control? Is a good question. I think that is something that needs to be explored. But here's where we are. The military had developed excess munitions, and it's easy to provide those through maybe a second, a third vendor that does business with law enforcement agencies across the United States versus other non-lethal types of intervention method. And that's the piece that I understood. That's a question that everybody should be asking. What are the alternatives versus using chemicals that have been prohibited under the Geneva Convention years ago? So I would like to know exactly the same question from our law enforcement officials. Have you sought other types of non-lethal crowd engage or riot engagement tools?
Co-chairs, Senator Manning, Jim Ferreras, great question. Senator, we are constantly looking for new tools that will help us accomplish our mission, lessening chance of injury or property damage. And it is a very narrow field beyond what we're talking about. And Senator Manning, to your question about crowd versus riot, you're right on point. There are different techniques that we're talking about managing people in a crowd. You're exactly right, versus a riot with unlawful criminal behavior. And all of my comments today have been focused on that unlawful riotous behavior. I'm not suggesting by any means we should use any of those tools on a peaceful, lawful First Amendment crowd.
Madam Co-Chair, can I really briefly?
Yes, we have two more questions in the queue. Representative Kenny Geyer and I assume Senator Frederick.
Okay, I do. Thank you.
Did you want to yield to them first, or did you?
Yes, I'll yield to them. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is a really, really hard conversation because it does trigger different people in different ways, obviously, because of the history of how water cannons were used in the past. I will say that what Alice Hurd was asking questions about what else can you use that is not chemical in nature, that can be more targeted, but is trying to control a riot that might be rushing a building where people are inside and lives are at stake. So I do think that the lives at stake versus property damage is an important distinction. But if you take it to that extreme, I will say that I texted somebody who's more knowledgeable in this area than I am about, is there any way to use water or water cannons I was worried about bringing it up and asking that on the record because of the fear of triggering, because that image also comes to my mind of how inappropriately the combination of water cannons and dogs were used against John Lewis and other protesters in the 60s. Those images, I actually was born in 1959. Those images are very present in my mind, and I can imagine how much more triggering there are for people in the Black community. So it's a hard question to put here on the record, but it did make me wonder, is there a way to use water in some way where if you had big restrictions around it and people were rushing and you couldn't use it to harm people, but you shot it at their feet, you know, is there a way to move on, to recognize, acknowledge the horrible way in which it's been used in the past, but think about how it might be a tool? So I'm searching for a way to make sure that we do have the ability, in the very rare instances that we might have a riot on a building, fire, people inside, what are the acceptable ways? And I know that tear gas, which is diffuse and it goes across blocks, and I have been exposed to that in the police, in a protest in downtown Portland, is really inappropriate for all the kind of, you know, health impacts and others that we've been hearing about. So there's something that as people are coming to a building, you can use. And that is one of the things that I thought, can you do that? Can you shoot it at people's feet with warnings? And it's only the people coming and it's not the people half a block away. So I'm searching for that, but I want to say it as respectfully as I can, because I know even the concept, even talking about that is such a triggering experience for so many people. So please accept my apologies if I've not been able to say it in a way that, as sensitively as possible. But I'm really just searching for what are tools that we can use appropriately with all kinds of guidelines. So just wanted to add that. I wasn't going to say anything on the record. I was going to try to have conversations off the record, but since it's out there on the table, just wanted to add my 2 cents there.
You're muted.
Yeah, we're near the end of our time today. We have Senator Frederick, and I promised to get back to Representative Lewis. And I think it's very important for me to say that we should assume good intent of all of our colleagues. We also recognize that each of us has individualized experiences, and that's what makes the beauty of this diverse committee so important. And so we offer each other grace. I offer Senator Krasonski grace, but I do feel it's important for us to be authentic with how we react to certain questions, and assume good intent always. So thank you, Senator Krasonski, for bringing up the issue. And I'll thank myself in the spirit of, I don't know, some rapper that says I'd like to thank myself, because I am not known to have very honest, genuine feelings in these committees, because you're trying to hold it together. But I can't do dogs and water. Senator Frederick.
Thank you. Well, Representative Kenny Geyer is actually on target when it comes to triggering. I have been hit by those water cannons, but I have also been down at the demonstrations and trying to figure out just what might be the best ways to deal with folks who are attempting to create some havoc. The small numbers that are attempting to create some havoc, and figure out just how to handle them. Tear gas was clearly did not clearly work. In fact, the tear gas was creating more problems for the folks in the Justice Center, because it was floating up into the cells and into the air system in the Justice Center, from what I understand. I think the question really is and I think Senator Przansky attempted to ask that, as well as Senator Manning. What are the alternatives that we have? What's in the toolbox to be used? And I don't think we've necessarily used some of those things, and they are not technology. They are, in fact, number of people in a crowd working with each other and trying to figure out who's actually causing the problem. So I appreciate the question, because we really do need to know what are the alternatives that are used or could be used to deal with that kind of thing. So I appreciate that. and I'd like to have some answers to that myself. Thank you.